Is it working? Yeah. So thank you all for joining this talk about how the innovation is supporting energy transition and decarbonization. So I am Tony Tanios from PwC and leading our energy transition and decarbonization practice. As an introduction, we are currently making full use of existing and mature technologies. Our goal is to achieve the short-term targets of the European Union by reducing the greenhouse gas emission by 55% in 2030 vs 1990. However, those levers cannot deliver everything, and there is a big limit, and our biggest goal is to go to carbon neutrality by 2050. Thus, it is essential to explore new technologies and solutions not yet mature, to invest in them and to harness these technologies. To discuss this topic, I'm pleased to have with me three committed actors, each of whom represent a certain facet of this transformation. We will see it together. So Mathilde Grivet, co-founder of GIMI, which is reinventing the industrial heat production thanks to a compact nuclear model, SMR. We will talk about that. Rachel Delacour, co-founder and CEO of Sweep, which puts data and software at the surface of companies' climate strategy. And finally, Thomas de Charette, head of decarbonization at Lafarge, who is leading the transformation of a historic industrial player through innovation. So first, let's begin exploring why these innovations that we will talk about are necessary today, and what challenges they aim to address and the opportunities they unlock, starting with you, Thomas. So the cement sector is a hard-to-abate sector. There is different hurdles that you are confronting. Inherent process emissions, high thermal demand, energy demand, and limited substitution options. Could you please tell us what technologies are you exploring, and maybe give us specific insights concerning carbon capture, use and storage, and how it's helping you, and is it an essential technology to be used for the sector?
Thank you, Tony. Thank you all for being here. I'm very pleased to be able to explain a little bit what is our strategy. As you say, we are quite an old and heavy industry, which is not normally seen as being very innovative or technologic company. But in fact, what is happening today with climate urgency and with the decarbonization roadmap that we are implemented, we are accelerating like never the innovation in our sectors. It is something which is quite incredible, and we are really living an industrial revolution in our sector. And as you were saying, we are so-called hard-to-abate sector in terms of CO2 emissions. Cement industry, it's something like 5, 6, 7% of the total CO2 emitted in the world. So it's quite significant. So we need really to do something very strong and very quickly. The other figures that you should also have in mind is cement and concrete. Let's say concrete, which is made with cement, is the second most used material in the world after water. So by saying this, it is obvious that we will continue to use concrete, at least in the coming decades. So we need to decarbonate concrete. There is no other issue. And there is most of our CO2 is coming from our process. It is not combustion. Combustion is only 30%, even though our process is really a process of combustion, because we have a huge heat in our process, more than 2,000 degrees flame in order to process the material. But only 30% is coming from combustion. 70% is coming from the raw material, which is limestone. And inside the limestone, there is CO2, and we need this CO2 to escape from the limestone, so then the process will continue, and then we be able to produce cement. So we are in that situation where we need to accelerate decarbonization, and we have traditional levers that we are accelerating. we are getting out the fossil fuels in our combustion, so it's only 30%, but let's try at least very soon to erase this CO2 emission from the combustion. So we really push hard in order to get out of the fossil fuels, to use alternative fuels that are mainly waste, and we try also to increase as much as we can biomass, waste that are composed of biomass. This has a lot of impact inside our process, so we also modify our process in order to be able to accept this type of alternative fuels. We are working on the recipe of our cement, how to develop new cementitious materials that are not coming from limestone, that are not burned at that level of temperature, but that propose the same characteristic of strength for our cement. And one of the, let's say, key breakthrough we're working on is activated clay, calcined clay. Instead of using limestone, we are looking for very specific clay. We activate it by heat at lower heat than with the limestone, and then you produce something which is quite similar to cement, but with very less CO2 emission. We also work on circularity, which is one of the key topics that we are working on. Circularity meaning that material that we, when the building is old, then you dismantle the building, and we try to recover, to recycle what was initially cement, and we put it in our process, and then this material has lower CO2 emission. We are doing all this in a very short period of time, but by doing this, still we have an issue with the CO2. Still we will continue to emit maybe 40% of CO2. And then we need to have carbon capture. And carbon capture is really a big breakthrough in terms of technology, meaning we need to capture the flue gas outside of the stack of the plant. You take it, you extract the CO2, you liquefy the CO2, you transport it, and then you find dedicated geological formation where you can sequestrate forever the CO2. So what we are doing with carbon capture is what we have done in the past for power or natural gas. When we decided that we could have in each house some natural gas, we have extracted gas, we have liquefied the gas, transport it, gasify again, store it, and bring it to each of our houses. And today this seems to be normal. What we are going to do with CO2 is the reverse way. We will capture CO2 at our cement plant, gasify, liquefy, transport it, store it. And for this, it's a full value chain where we are not anymore alone as a cement player. We need to work with infrastructure, we need to work with power, we need to work with people that know how to handle the gas. So this is really, this is why I'm saying it's a revolution, because we are also not only decarbonizing our asset, but we are also working in the full network with all key players, very knowledgeable players, where we were not used to work together, and now we need to work all together. And I will finish, sorry, I am quite long also in my discussion, but it is a passionate topic. Something also which is another technological revolution is with the CO2 that you emit in the atmosphere, it could be also a feedstock, a raw material, if I could say, in order to produce new molecules, synthetic molecules. CO2 is carbon, oxygen. If you produce hydrogen in a green way, then you have the three key elements to produce whatever you want, methanol, methane, kerosene. So while we are capturing our CO2 in order to decarbonize our process, we also try to develop new plant in order to produce molecules and be finally independent from the fossil fuel like gas that today, or petrol that today are used in order to produce all these molecules. Tomorrow, maybe with our own CO2, we will be independent and able to produce all these molecules.
Yeah, thank you a lot. It's a very nice way of things, saying that what's unnormal today to sequestrate CO2, to have pipelines, will be normal tomorrow, as in the era of exploiting gas. A question for you, Mathilde, as well. Today, it's unnormal to use nuclear power with small heat reactors and use it in industrial applications. Could you please explain to us what specifically Jimmy can give as a new solution for the industry, and why it is essential today for the industry?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Tony, for the question. So yes, in fact, at Jimmy, we wanted to tackle the challenge of energy transition, and we realized that there is an elephant in the room, which is how can you decarbonize heat? Because we are very good at decarbonizing power, especially in France with nuclear, with the renewables. But when you look at heat, which is massively used by the industry, by housing, by residential buildings, you do not really know how to decarbonize it. And this also joins what Thomas just mentioned. So we said, okay, how can we decarbonize heat? And in fact, you have a source of very low carbon competitive heat, which are nuclear reactors, so nuclear fission. Nowadays, it has been used for the past 80 years in order to produce power, electricity. But what you have as an output at the beginning of the nuclear fission reaction is heat. So the question was, is it possible to redesign a nuclear reactor that will be perfectly suited to industrial sites, and that will be able to replace fossil fuel burners, like gas burners, fuel burners, and so on, and to produce heat that can be both competitive, because it's a must-have, and decarbonize. So this was the beginning of Jimmy, and we created the company in 2020 to do so. And so what we design actually is what we call a generator. So it's a building that is about 30 meters high, and that contains a micro-nuclear reactor. We take an existing technology that is called the high temperature reactor. So it has existed for the past 60 years. It's very well known. It's very safe. And it's also interesting because it can produce high temperature heat. So we have this generator with the micro-nuclear reactor inside of it. And the reactor will produce heat for 20 years. And then we are going to simply connect the reactor to the process of our industrial clients, mostly to produce steam. So the industries that we are addressing are mostly the chemical industry, the food and beverage industry, and the paper and pulp industry. They are the three largest consumers of steam today.
And
so yes.
Mathilde, just a question. When can we expect the first prototype to be operational?
So that's a very good question. So we have a first project that is ongoing. So the goal is to install the first of a kind in the east of France, close to the city of Reims, if some of you know it, on the site of an industrial sugar refinery and alcohol distillery. So it's a very, very energy-intensive process. They are the 50th largest emitting site in France. They use steam a lot, and so the goal is to come here and, with the first of a kind, decarbonize first a part of their process. So for this first of a kind, we have actually two main challenges. The first one is the regulation. So at the moment, we have a first file under review by the Autorité de Sûreté Nucléaire, so the French Nuclear Safety Authority. The review is going well. We are at the phase of technical question and answers, and it should still last a few months or years. And the second key challenge, of course, is industrialization, because we rely on a proven technology with an existing supply chain, but we still have to just source and procure all the equipment and make it into a reality. So this is the second critical path, and we hope to be there before 2030.
We will talk about the challenges in 2 minutes, but before that, maybe going to you, Rachel. We are talking about hardware technical bricks.
Which is a challenge in
which
itself.
is a challenge itself, exactly. And my question to you is how SWEEP today helps organization to go monitoring this kind of journey and addressing the right aspects at the right moment.
What you could hear previously with you is the ecosystem you are navigating in, the value chain that you are navigating in, the upstream partners, downstreams, emissions, carbon emissions that you have in all your value chain, how could Lafarge also use Jimmy. But all this is really part of what we need to fight climate change, definitely. But at the core of this, there is a huge challenge, which is all those data points that you need to, at some point, consolidate in one single place to understand, to make the invisible, okay, all those carbon emissions, etc., become visible. So the good news is that we are able, the world today is able to transform any pixels of data, of activity data, into carbon. Okay, there is a methodology, science for that, etc. But at some point, you need to make sure that all those points, data points, pixels of data in all the different data sources are connected in one single place to make sure that a Lafarge, for example, is able to make the better decisions out of what they are doing in their, you know, on how you are innovating as well. So we are we are doing our part in that ecosystem where software is actually gathering, collecting all that data, so that the whole the large companies, we are calling you the biggest agent of change, can really have a real understanding at the T moment. And for this, you need huge data handling capabilities. So this is where we come from, okay? And this is what maybe large companies are still at some point underestimating, because at the core of navigating it the right way, there is projects, of course, that you have to initiate, but there is a data project where carbon, but also ESG data. We know the sense of history. We know that it will have to be monitored. We know that despite the CSRD being watered down, for example, for disclosure purpose at a worldwide scale, there is less CSRD at the moment. It will come back. The ambition has not been lower. But there is also new frameworks out there, ISSB disclosure frameworks in Asia Pac, for example. So what I mean is that you need to understand all your data points in one single place to understand, okay, where you can act to make sure you are on your net zero path for large accounts. And because it's super complex to do, AI today, when you have the right data management platform for your sustainability data, AI is doing real magic from the data collection of it, working on the quality of your data, making sure that the governance of this data is well understood, well managed within large entities where you have multiple business units, etc. So AI is helping everywhere from a qualitative point as well, you know, to understand what you've done before in your companies and how those actions can help other entities benchmark what has been done previously. So it's to make sure that technology and software is also, you have hardware and deep tech, etc., doing the job. You have the biggest agent of change who are making the right decisions. But at the core of it, there is that data project, and you need software for that. So you need all this ecosystem. It's a new ecosystem. It's full of new jobs as well. This is great. It's full of experience for AI. AI should be used only on this and maybe not on on autonomous vehicles. Okay, maybe we should use the power of AI for climate change instead of other non very useful, I would say, technology.
Thank you. Thank you. Apparently, we still have 5 minutes, so we are talking a lot. But if we can do a quick tour, like 1 minute answer to say what are the main hurdles not getting you go to scale, or using, for example, CCUS on all your plants everywhere. What's the main hurdles? Maybe in 1 minute, beginning with you, Mathieu.
Yes, for sure. So if we talk about scale, the question is what are the hurdles after the first of a kind? And for us, it's going to be how can we go from 1 reactor a year to 5-10 reactors a year? And for that, we will need an adapted supply chain. We need really for the supply chain to ramp up and to become more industrial, more automatized. And then there will be also, of course, a big challenge of social acceptance of what we do.
Thank you.
So the big challenge for us, if I'm looking at the carbon capture, for example, is for sure the complexity of the full chain, and there is interface everywhere in that chain, and at each interface there is contract between different companies. So what is really at stake for us is to de-risk this whole value chain and this whole chain. And there is a real need, first of all, to be consistent, because it is so complex that we are engaging a lot of energy and a lot of money, obviously, also behind this. We need to have a consistency in the politics, in the European politics, that we believe is the good one. The Green Deal is a really good opportunity for the companies to be more competitive. We need consistencies, and then we need to help de-risking this whole value chain so that the investment will come at the right time.
Okay, perfect. And to you, Rachel, same.
Yeah, on my side, I would say that it's more also about making sure the CEOs and the board members, understand the ROI of all this. The ROI of sustainability. There is already so many proof points about that. Real return on investment. This is a competitive advantage, and we know the sense of history again. So of course, we have so many companies already able to get those ROI. But what I mean is that we are still evolving in a fragmented world, definitely. So there is what we can do at a European level on large regions, but at the end of the day, it's a fragmented world. So yeah, the more we can interconnect what's not fragmented today, the best it is to fight climate change.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you a lot. And let's see if there is any questions to our speakers.
Thank you so much for the talk. I have a question to you, Monsieur de Charette. How does carbon offset plays a role for Lafarge? Carbon offsetting.
Offsetting.
We are not offsetting CO2 emission. We really want to reduce our CO2 emission. So we are not. This is not a lever at all for us, offsetting. This is really how, by the process, by all this new technology, we can accelerate reducing the emission and then stop them completely through carbon capture.
And don't you think you should do both at the same time?
I mean, for us, really, we know that there is real levers to decrease physically the carbon content of our product. So what we really want to focus on is how really physically the product that we sell is really with less CO2. So this is really the strategy that we have.
Excellent, thank you. Any other question? Yeah.
I have a question to Mathilde. How are you going to tackle the social acceptance challenge? Do you have a plan?
In fact, maybe as a start, we see that nowadays no project, be it nuclear or not, can really be realized with fully social acceptance. If you see biomass, biogas, all the projects are having challenges of social acceptance. And so we think that, in fact, in that context, we have one advantage is that because nuclear is so regulated, we have a very strong and one of the most demanding safety authorities of the world, which can really act as a trustworthy third party in order to ensure that what we are doing is safe, is regulated, and is controlled. So we think that the safety authority will really play a very important role in our social acceptability. And then, of course, it's about informing the people close by to the industrial sites. It's about being transparent and so on and so forth. And so for the moment, we have two reality checks because we announced the location of the first reactor, and so far it has been going pretty well with the local officials, with the workers of the site. And then we also have a project of an industrial site in another region of France, which will be a GME-operated factory. And in that case also, there is a very good feedback at the moment from the local population. So it's a challenge that we are really, that we know will be permanent for GME. It's one of our main focus. But yes, these are the two elements I can say to your question.
Any last question?
Hello, thanks a lot for the inspiring panel. I had a question with the recent publication of the, I don't want to say that in English, but the PPE in France, like the law for the energy. Will that have any impact, for example, of the ongoing strategy? Or are you anticipating any type of new regulation that can come in place and maybe change a bit the strategy, how you structure your strategy for decarbonizing? For example, with an increased cost of energy, that is quite important for your operations. So yeah, maybe it's a big question, but have you given any thought on it? Thanks a lot.
To whom is the question, Maëlle?
What I can just tell you, but maybe it's much more for you, but what I can tell you is that as long as you have the regular, as long as you are collecting regularly at a granular level all your pixels of activity that you are transforming into, into carbon, you are able also to better anticipate cost new pressure, on those data points. So this is like all what you are doing in a P&L, on the financial side. You have to do the same to anticipate, to simulate, to modelize, scenarios of a new regulation. So this is our job, But then there is the action, out of it. So.
I'm not sure I will directly answer to that, but in order to let's say what an investor hate the worst is uncertainty. So and as you say, power, electricity, energy is one of the big piece of the cost in our transition, especially in our industry. So the only thing that we want is to have visibility on this cost of energy. I think something which is very crucial in this transition. We all know all the discussion that we can have today with the different energy producer, but at the end of the day, it should be at the right cost, for sure. The lower, the better. But for sure, what is really important is to be visible, so that then you can plan your investment. Then you know exactly what you need, and you can make a return on investment because you know exactly what will be. So long-term visibility on energy cost is the key.
Thank you. And maybe to close the panel, what we are seeing is that innovation is needed to fill this gap in our journey. We will be able to achieve our, hopefully, our short-term target. But however, to go beyond to the full decarbonization 2050 without a new innovation, new investments, it will be impossible. And the future will depend on the decisions that we will take today and where we will be investing today. And thank you all for joining this talk with us.
Thank you.